Piedmont Pines Neighborhood Association President Stan Weisner.
Well, thank you, Robbie, for all your efforts to put this event together, and all our hardworking board members. I certainly want to welcome Mayor Thao and her staff and all of you in Piedmont Pines who've joined us tonight. Also, many of you have submitted questions. Robbie indicated there were almost over 70, and we'll try to get to all of them as much as possible tonight. As our council person for District 4 for several years, we appreciated the mayor's good efforts to effectively address many of our local concerns in District 4. Now as mayor, maybe not less complex, but the demands and range of citywide challenges are far greater, which I guess is no big surprise to her or to all of us. In your recent State of the City address, your administration's several accomplishments over the past 9 months were mentioned, including increased numbers of foot patrols, 9/11 improvements, all in the area of public safety, which is a big focus tonight, of course. 1,200 shelter beds, local business and merchant support that your office has offered, pothole reports, repairs, new partlets, and so on. But as you can tell from the long list of questions tonight, our residents that have posed them, seems like much remains to be done in your administration over the next years, especially in the area of public safety. This effort to communicate with our residents is much appreciated. I know you've done this with other neighborhoods, and it's really important to keep this communication process live and vital, and we look forward to that tonight. So let's get started. First, as Robbie mentioned, you'll have about 30 to 45 minutes to address the group and respond to some of the questions that we've posed to you that you've seen. Then we'll use the rest of the time for questions from the audience. So that's the order of program tonight, and I want to very much welcome you, Mayor Shao, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stan, and thank you, Robbie. Really miss PPNA. This is amazing that we're all back together again. Hi, everyone, and good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm your 51st Mayor, Mayor Sheng Thao. I know your area very well, as I have represented the area for the last 4 years. Something that I'm really excited about in that specific district that we were able to work on from the very beginning to where it's at now. Obviously, we fought for undergrounding. I know there's a lot of issues around the undergrounding part that we fought for right now, which we're going to continue to help you with that. But I thought that was a huge success in regards to working with PG&E and really getting the CPUC to change their mind to allow for undergrounding credits in the Piedmont Pines area. More so than that, we are developing about 197 affordable units above 580 right on MacArthur and High Street, and that was done during my term, and so now you're seeing the build out of that as well. So just wanted to touch on those two things I'm really excited about in District 4. Brandon, if you can pull up the slides so that we can go over the slides as part of this. Thank you. So this is just, of course, it's my face, but you please do reach out to my office. You'll see that there's a phone number there, and there's also the email address as well. The goals of this evening is strictly to talk about public safety, just public safety. So there's many other things that are happening. I want to be very clear about that here, and that we are working on. But today we'll be talking about public safety, what work is being done, what has been done, and what to expect on the horizon, and of course, answer some of your questions as well. And Robbie just stated that if we don't get to one of your questions, we will definitely get you a written response, get it back to Robbie and Stan so that they can get it back out to you all. Next slide, please. All right, I think that it's incredibly important to really, get a focus in on what is it that is unique, especially around the next 2 years and what we have inherited in regards to the city's budget. And so balancing the city budget, the highlight is that, well, it's actually a low light, but it's the $360 million in deficit that the city is seeing right now. In spite of this, we were able to actually balance our budget with 0 layoffs and nothing, and not touching any dollars from our programming where we program for our youth. And so our Parks and Rec centers, we did not touch a dollar from that. And, you know, we already know that we're not doing a sufficient job here at the city with delivering services to our constituencies. So it was important to me to make sure that we didn't have any layoffs with city staff. And then not just that, but what happened was that created a stronger morale in city staff because they didn't have to worry about whether or not they would be laid off. We also continue to fund an increase in police staffing. What we were able to do is I invested in my budget proposal 6 police academies over the next 2 years. The standard and the normal is usually just 4 police academies over the next 2 years. So that's 2 police academies a year. But under my mayoral proposal, we funded 3 police academies in the first year and 3 in the second year. Also, we've also continued to fund macro, which is our mental health response, and other community safety programming as well. We'll go through all of this in the next slides to come. But we also invested a record number of $209 million investment into acquiring or development of affordable housing. So thank you to everybody who voted for Measure U. Those are the dollars that we'll be able to utilize moving forward to really expand our housing stock for the 0 income, low income, affordable, and acquiring new affordable housing as well too. We also set $87 million towards the 5-year paving plan and more than $106 million in funds to build, repair, and upgrade parks, recreation facilities, libraries, storm drains, and non-road infrastructure as well. Next slide. And of course, I know you all are wondering, where are we at in regards to the 5-year paving plan? And so this is going to continue on to the Great Pave, which is the largest paving effort in Oakland history. And although we have been 80 years behind on paving work, when you know, when I was actually elected to the city council, we have seen that in the under the Schaaf administration, we were able to move forward with many of those paved streets, but we're going to continue those efforts. And so you may have noticed that some of that work is already underway in your neighborhood and other neighborhoods as well too. Brandon will drop the link to this site so that you can, it's very interactive, so that you can play with it on your own time. If you would like to see why your street is not on the paving plan, there are measurements for every single street. And so Brandon will drop that link into the chat. And of course, if there are potholes or anything that you would like to report to the city, please use the 311 to report potholes, to report stolen vehicles, to report basically anything, so that we can actually filter it and send it to the right, correct department. Next slide, please. This is incredibly important slide, of course. This is the community safety priorities. You know, wanted to really dive into detail because there will be a summary of all of these in the different slides, but there's an enforcement mechanism, which is the response from OPD and what we're doing with OPD, to, you know, the prevention and intervention side as well. I think that it's incredibly important to ensure that we have both of these, that we are intervening and that we are preventing crimes from happening before they happen. But at the same time, you know, it's a cost benefit analysis and we have to be very honest about that. And so the enforcement is needed and must be implemented. And so if we go to the next slide so we can talk through all of these topics. All right. So just as a little bit of history, police around our police staffing and our numbers. In 2008, due to the financial crisis, we saw that the leadership at the time voted to lay off about 80 police officers. And what you'll see is that ever since that 2008 layoff of the 80 officers, the city of Oakland was never able to really recover from actually that number of officers. And so in 2020, OPD does see a major officer attrition due to retirements and what they are deeming as internal cultural issues. We do give an exit interview when officers leave, and this is internal cultural issues has been cited as one of the reasons why some of our officers were leaving. At this time in 2020, what we saw was between 8 to 10 officers leaving the city every single month. And so in 2021, when I was a council member representing your district, I introduced and was able to get enough votes to pass the then Thao Public Safety Plan. And that funding funded new academies and created incentives for officers to stay in Oakland, including the incentive as being, instead of waiting 5 years to get a bonus for being a good officer, that was cut down to 2.5 years. There's also an incentive about hiring locally. If you go through a police academy and you pass and you are successful and you are local here, you have ties to Oakland, then you get an incentive. Also laterals. If you were an OPD officer previously and you left to, let's say, the sheriff's department or San Francisco, if you come back, we were able to give you an incentive. And so that's how we were able to slowly build up our force again. In February 2023, under the, I reestablished foot patrols and the motorcycle traffic detail. Previously, our foot patrols were taken away from the previous administration. And so I'm a true believer that foot patrols do help deter and at the same time builds true community policing. And so we reestablished in February the 6 foot patrol officers, and then now we've just doubled that. So now we have 12 foot patrol officers in business corridors across the whole city. Of course, in June 2023, the city council agreed with me to fund 6 new police academies over the next 2 years. Again, the normal for that is 4 police academies. That's the standard, but the city council was able to agree with my office and moved forward with the 6 new police academies. And so to date, we have about 711 police officers in our city. Obviously, I don't feel like that's enough, but we are continuously hiring for police officers. It does take time, and we do have the strongest training in the whole nation as well too. And so I'm very optimistic about what our numbers will look like in the future. Next slide. Just a little graph about the police staffing over the past 5 years. We saw that huge dip right between 2021 and 2022 there. And then we are now increasing our officers back up. We expect that this month's academy will bring us back to above 730 officers. I want to be very clear that this is the most officers that we've seen on the streets for the last 2 years. And then on top of the officers, we're also pairing that with community ambassadors. We know that officers, criminals are, they'll watch the officers, and if the officers are still sitting in the area, they won't actually commit the crime until they leave for a priority 1 call, let's say, for example. And so that's why having ambassadors that are consistently in the community, especially in the business corridor, is so important to ensuring the public safety strategy will actually work. Next slide. In addition, I wanted to free up more of our officers. We are still under the federal oversight, and we'll talk about that a little later. And so what that means is that the way that we police here in the city of Oakland looks a lot different than how the highway patrol patrols or how other city police. And so it's incredibly important to me to figure out, how do we free up our officers from, let's say, doing the traffic enforcement, right? People who are driving like they've just lost their minds. I know I've seen them. I know you have too. I tapped the California Highway Patrol. I called the governor and I said, hey, Gavin, I really need support in regards to the traffic enforcement here in the city of Oakland. And I think that CHP will be great for that narrowly tailored job. And so he agreed, and he was able to send us 6 highway patrol officer plus 1 sergeant. And then just recently, I've asked for CHP support in regards to our encampment closures and cleanups. And the governor has graciously given us those resources as well too. This is important because, think of it, as the city staff goes out to clean the encampments and clear the encampments, a lot of times there are people who have very strong feelings who may come back and may attack our city workers. So although our officers are they usually are just sitting in the car to ensure that everything's going smoothly, that does take up some of our officers. And so replacing our OPD officers with CHP is going to alleviate the stress on OPD so that they can go out and do the real crime fighting. Next slide. All right. And so I'm really excited for the Flock automated license plate readers here in the city of Oakland. We know that this is a huge political lift. When I called on the governor again to ask for $1.2 million to purchase 300 cameras for the city of Oakland, one of the very first questions he asked me is, do you have the political support? We know that city council, if they do not vote for it, it does not get implemented. And so, of course, as part of my responsibility that I take very seriously is building those relationships with city council members and also commissioners like the Privacy Commission. I do feel like it is my job to really help answer any questions that people may, council members or commissioners may have, so that when we have good policies come before us, that it doesn't get politicized only so that it can get voted on, so that we can actually keep our community safe. And so that's exactly what we did here with the Flock automated license plate readers, which it does more than that, and I'll explain in a little bit. We really worked, my team in the mayor's office, we really worked closely with the Privacy Commission. Chief Allison worked closely with the Privacy Commission to really answer all of their questions. We have one of the strongest privacy rules under these cameras, and that is we are not sharing any information and data around any undocumented immigrants, around any women seeking an abortion. No data will be shared for any other purpose outside of criminal acts in the city of Oakland. And if we do not use this data within 30 days as support for charging, then we must delete it. And so that is an automated system that will delete after 30 days. And that's incredibly important to our privacy rules here in the city of Oakland. More so than that, this will enable the regional coordination that we all know that we need. Crime is fluid. It moves from city to city. We have Oaklanders committing crimes in other cities, we have criminals coming in from other cities committing crimes here in the city of Oakland. And so the automated license plate readers, yes, it can read license plate, but it is actually high tech enough to really hone in on the different aspects and details. So here's an example. If there was a white Honda Civic, two-door, let's say one of the hubcap is missing and they had just committed a crime, they jump in the car and they flee. Well, if somebody calls in and say, hey, there was a hubcap missing, but it was a white Honda Civic two-door. Well, we can go into the computer system and actually punch that in, and it'll show us all the vehicles that are white Honda Civic two-doors, that are possibly white Honda Civic two-doors. And then we can start looking to see where we can locate the vehicle that has the hubcap that's missing. If they are to run into San Leandro or Piedmont or Berkeley or Alameda or even San Francisco, guess what? All of the cities have now agreed that they will also install the automated license plate readers. And I'm just hearing today that San Jose is doing the same thing. And so we are leading the charge in regards to how do we run a regional approach in regards to crime fighting, especially around breaking into people's homes and car burglaries as well. And so the question becomes, okay, great. The city takes forever to put up cameras. I agree. The city takes forever to do a lot of different things. And this is why it was important to me to ensure that the Flock cameras are actually put up by the people who we are purchasing them from. And so that means that the majority of the 300 cameras will be up and running by the end of the year and leading on to the new year. Also with this, and this is something that I will be proposing once it's all baked and ready to go, is a command center. The command center, of course, these cameras, they're not, it doesn't work if there's not someone actually, monitoring the different cameras at any given time or what have you. And so we do have a plan on really working in partnership with different cities so that Oakland is the central command center and that we can tap into their resources, their officers to come and help us with making sure that there's always staffing when we have the video cameras up and running. Of course, more so than that, if you actually have a Flock camera, or I know of neighborhood associations that are buying the Flock cameras, they can also ensure that the city is tapped into the cameras so that we can also utilize those resources as well. All right, next slide, please. Increasing police presence to deter crime. Again, we reinstated Oakland's walking police patrols in commercial corridors. after they were cut. So we started off in February with 6 of those walking patrols, and now we are up to 12. We've also brought back Oakland's traffic enforcement unit. So that looks like our motor patrols, right? So our officers on motorcycles are really trying to pull people over who are driving recklessly, running red lights, running stop signs. We see this happening all the time, and we need to get a hold on it. And so our motorcycle patrol, they are out. If you haven't seen them, that is because they are very hyper-focused on areas where we know that there's a lot of pedestrians, specifically where there are young children. Also, we've also doubled the number of officers patrolling our commercial corridors to provide more support in partnership with businesses and shoppers. What we're doing is that we are layering a lot of the resources. For example, in downtown, many of the storefronts already have private cameras and already may have private security. And so we're braiding all of these resources to really stretch the resources that we have here in the city so that we can all be working in community to support each other when it comes to fighting crime. Next slide. All right, scaling up the macro program to support dispatch calls. So a known or not so known fact is about 60% of our calls that into 911 are non-emergency. And so in order to alleviate that stress, it's hopeful that we can get to, a 3-digit number for macro in the future. But as of right now, you can call 777-3333 to get to the macro program. Macro stands for the Mobile Assistance Community Responders of Oakland. And basically it deploys civilian responders to non-criminal 911 calls, such as homelessness or mental health episodes. Obviously, in these cases, sometimes a macro will have to work with OPD and OPD with macro, especially in our mental health episodes where a person may be too unstable to actually be safe to work with. Also, we doubled investment into the macro program to scale up the services and support for residents and businesses. Many of our business districts have been utilizing macro, and they're seeing that it is working and it shows positive results. We also increased macro's ability to take dispatch calls from 2% of all calls for service to 58%, again, helping ease the burden on OPD. And of course, Brandon will drop some information on macro into our chat. Next slide. Ceasefire program. So coming into office, I knew that ceasefire worked at a certain point in time, right? And so if you can see right where it says 2012 to 2014, you're seeing that. So ceasefire is basically a hyper focus on small groups of people, group or gangs that are usually the ones that are pulling the trigger and killing people. And so really hyper focus on this small group of people. And we're seeing that in 2012, there was a huge drop in homicides from 2012 to 2014, right? And then we see that from about 2014, there was a slight increase. And then from 2016 to 18, there was another decrease. And of course, the pandemic just created a lot of difficulties. And so what was working and what wasn't working, and how can we invest more into what was working? And so immediately after getting sworn in, I was able to work with Kaiser to get over $500,000 for a audit into ceasefire to just understand exactly that. Because what we see is that when there was a dip between 2012 and 2018 in homicides, we also saw that property crimes actually dropped as well too. So there is a correlation there. And so the ceasefire program, it is an effective gang violence prevention program that again successfully brought homicides down from before the pandemic started. And so with this, we are now getting the results of the audit, and we have been implementing for the last almost month now with the new different tools, and how do we actually really gear up so that OPD and our Department of Violence Prevention and macro can really gather the information that is needed to change the way that we police due to the change in how criminals are behaving and what kind of crimes we're seeing. For example, we are seeing that it is no longer, gang members are no longer selling, let's say, drugs on the corner, right? We're seeing that groups and gangs are actually now bipping or breaking into car windows and stealing people's belongings, and are part of the fencing organization where they're dropping the stolen electronics into storefronts that are just fronts for the fencing rings, and then they're being shipped out to China and other places. And so, the crimes are changing, and so we have to change with the time as well too. Next item. All right, the auto burglary suppression units. Look, I always ask people, like, how many of you are sick and tired of your windows being broken into? I'm the first one to raise my hand. You probably heard in the news that my window was broken into, my car was broken into. Trust me, that was not the first time, and trust me when I say that was not my last time either. And so we're really taking this seriously. I started the auto burglary suppression unit. I have this detail that they help, it's basically my security. Well, I have relieved them so they can go and do undercover work around auto burglaries in high burglary incidences throughout the whole city, in East Oakland, downtown, West Oakland, everywhere in all of these different corridors. And so what we're seeing is that every time these guys are out, that we are actually catching those who are breaking actively in front of officers, breaking into people's vehicles, and we are apprehending them. So in the first 2 weeks, 10 individuals were arrested thanks to this operation. We are headed into, I believe, week 4. And so it has actually shown huge results. I just actually was talking to both of my chiefs, and it shows that there has been a significant dip in regards to auto burglaries in the city of Oakland. And so this is working. Again, we meet once every single week on Monday to really retweak and reorganize our department, depending on what the data is showing us, depending on what gang groups are related, if any, and depending on, which areas are taking in the most hits in regards to burglaries and what have you. And we were really, making sure that we're being proactive. Next slide, please. Operation North Star. We continue to work with all the different agencies. I'm in close contact with the U.S. Marshals. I'm in close contact with the FBI, DEA, the Attorney General's office as well too. And so Operation North Star 2 was a joint operation. And so what happened was that we actually were able to apprehend 137 individuals, including 31 homicide suspects. 31 homicide suspects here in the city of Oakland. And so again, Oakland will continue to collaborate with the U.S. Marshals and other agencies to address crime citywide. We do have an operation where we're working directly with the Attorney General's office and the DEA and FBI right now as well too. And so those are still ongoing. Next slide. Investing in our youth. I'm a big believer that if we want to have a higher feel of safety in the future, that we have to invest in our young people right now. And that is part of the public safety mechanism that we're moving forward. And so what that looks like is that we've invested $3.4 million into violence interrupters at at-risk OUSD high school campuses to help address school safety and ensure that our youth are on the path to success. So what that means is that we know that we, as the government in the city of Oakland, we don't have jurisdiction over OUSD. However, the kids that go to our OUSD schools, they are still constituents of the city of Oakland. And if they are having, issues on campus, those issues will spill over onto the streets. And so with that being said, we really have a full team at each of these schools to really figure out what are some of the issues that these kids are going through and trying to interrupt before it becomes very violent. And so we have seen that there have been, shootings on school campus from student to another student. At the end of the day, there are way too many illegal guns out on our streets. And so, of course, we are continuing to work with ATF on getting those illegal guns off the streets too, but it just feels as if you get one gun off the street and there's 10 new ones coming in. And so we're going to continue to do this work so that we can make sure that everyone is safe. This is the first ever school violence prevention summit. We held a summit where we brought in principals and leaders at the school to really understand and be more prepared when they're calling 911. you know, what are the information that automatically you should already know, right? Where's your location? You know, what's happening? Do you see a weapon? It really allows for us to cut down the time so that OPD can get right to the situation, understand the situation that they're walking right into, and then be able to tackle the issue at hand. Of course, we also had the grand opening of the Town Youth Club via collaboration with the Oakland LGBTQ+ Center. The new Town Youth Club opened in June and provides programming and support for all LGBTQ+ youth. So please spread that information around. Next slide. So I've launched, I believe last week, we've launched the Mayor's Advisory Council on Human Trafficking. This is going to be a dedicated team of experts that meet and strategizes and advises me on the best practices in order to tackle human trafficking. So this is led through the eyes and the lens and the experience of survivors in the community. We know that, you know, human trafficking in the city of Oakland, it's been a thing for many, many decades before I was even born. However, we really need to, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to solve the problem. Absolutely not. But what I do know is that 40% of the trafficked women identify as Black or brown. And so at the end of the day, 40%, that's 40% way too many. And so we're working with OPD on their special ops team, and at the same time with survivors, so that we can really go after the pimps and the Johns, you know, in the city of Oakland. And we're seeing that every single day that we run the operation, that we are actually making, apprehending many, many Johns, and going after the pimps as well too. Next slide item. Climate resilience in Oakland. This is a really fun one. Climate change, of course, we have to address it. And if it's, you know, we have to address it today. We have no moment to lose. And so when I was on city council, I did lead the efforts on the climate resilience and wildfire prevention planning, creating, you know, the wildfire prevention working group, which has scaled up to the city's efforts in response to wildfires. And of course, you all know that because you live in the high wildfire risk area. And so as mayor, I am continuing that work by currently lobbying the state CPUC to include Oakland in the utility undergrounding plan, which affects all of you. And of course, successfully worked with Caltrans to begin vegetation clearing work along Highway 13, as you have probably seen. Working to establish a regional wildfire prevention memorandum of understanding with neighboring jurisdictions. Because we know wildfire knows no bounds, and they will cross through city lines, absolutely. Also updated the vegetation management plan, and we have high hopes to bring back the Wildfire Prevention Assessment District back, and secured the largest Climate Corps fellowship in the state to help get more young people into climate service, and introduced a robust new urban forest master plan today, which will help the city plan the future of tree maintenance and planting. Of course, we also have, we won the federal dollars, as you have probably heard with President Biden announced that Oakland is going to be a recipient of a brand new hydrogen hub. And so that has been something that I have been working on since getting into office, really going to Washington, D.C. to really create those relationships with leaders and decision makers, especially decision makers around funding. And so what you're seeing is that we have won many of the fundings in regards to climate change, and not just that, but our in the infrastructure bill, more wins are coming through that as well. Next slide. So if you want to stay up to date with my office, please do sign up. The way that you can sign up is go ahead and scan this QR code, or you can email us at officeofthemayor@oaklandca.gov. Of course, you can also follow me on all of my social media handles as well. Next slide. All right, so we're at the Q&A. Brandon, how would you like to handle this?
Stan, you said you may step in at this point. Do you need to? Or do you want to just go dive into the questions you send over to us?
While Stan is figuring that out, I would like to also state that, you know, this past summer, I was able to lead my first delegation to Vietnam. And that delegation, I understand that we continuously here in the city of Oakland go after property owner taxes. And I'm trying to stop that habit, because it's not helpful for homeowners. It's definitely not helpful for renters like myself when you're looking into buying a home, and yet on top of your mortgage, you have like high taxes. And so for me, I take seriously as mayor of Oakland to really go out and find new sources of funding. And so my trip to Vietnam proved to be very successful. We worked our butts off, but we did a really great job, as you should be proud that we were able to sign 3 MOUs. So then businesses that were shipping their items to other places throughout California are now shipping through the city of Oakland. So that was 3 specific wins on 3 different business ventures. And then of course, we are working to solidify the MOU for a direct flight from the city of Oakland to Vietnam. And that is going to bring in new revenues. Many of these will be creating new jobs for the city of Oakland, new good paying jobs. And so we're really excited about how we can increase our resources and our dollars here in the city of Oakland so we can stop going after homeowners' property dollars.
Yeah, Brandon, I just had a couple follow-ups, but I think the Q&A is going to address so many of the questions that you already have repeated. I just wanted to, you mentioned the foot patrols, which is great. Are any of them going to be centered in the Montclair shopping district, or for that matter, Rockridge? Are they assigned districts, the foot patrols? Did you?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Yes, there's already assignments for foot patrol in the Laurel and in Montclair. You know, is it Officer Hall, I believe, right? Is in the area. Cooper,
Yeah, Cooper, our bike guy. He's back.
Yes, he is back. And so I did talk to him and made sure that he was up in the Montclair area. So that has already been approved. You know, the expansion of the foot patrol is to be held in other areas that doesn't actually currently have the foot patrol. But yes, foot patrol is in Montclair and in the Laurel, and we're doing a lot of visibility, and we're actually running some operations in the Diamond. We're seeing there's a lot of criminal activities in the Diamond District, and so we're, you know, focused on that area as well.
Good. Yeah, so, you know, often the foot patrol officers or our community resource officers are pulled away because of other priorities around the city. So hopefully there'll be someone who will actually be able to be there at some point, even having perhaps a Montclair-based OPD office based there. But that's in the future, something that's being considered.
Yeah, no, that is, you know,
so there is some presence in Montclair.
Yes, there's presence in Montclair for sure. I mean, in an ideal world where we can have as many officers as we want, I would love to have officers everywhere. But the goal is, and I was it very much irritated me that when I was a council member, our CROs and CRTs were being pulled from the district.
Exactly.
And so I'm trying my best. As we are, and that's why I told the chief, as I just keep hiring guys, you know, because there'll be attrition, just keep hiring. And so as we are hiring more people on, then that is the goal, is that we do not touch this, specifically the CROs. The CRTs, yeah, maybe we can take those, but the CROs, they should remain in the community.
Yeah, they get to know it better. Just a couple follow-ups, then I'll let you go. On the flock issue, there were several meetings with the use of flock and surveillance cameras, and the problem was that even when there's a direct identification, reporting to the OPD did not result in follow-up in a timely manner. So is that something that you're working with OPD and Flock to kind of fast pace the response that's needed?
Absolutely. And this is part of, like, that's what I told OPD before even investing in Flock, we have to have a central command station. Right? It doesn't make sense to invest $1.2 million into the Flock cameras when no one's monitoring it.
Exactly.
It'll just be politicians speaking again with no real actual tangible results. And so I was very clear with the police chief that if this is what we're going to do, we can move forward, you know, bits by bit, but by next year, all the cameras would be up. And then so the chief is actually working on what that dollar amount would look like to have that centralized command center.
Yeah, another follow-up. The nonprofits that do violence prevention are outstanding. Hopefully there are outcome measures, matrix that you follow up. So the ones that are more effective get more of the resources than others. Ceasefire is one of them that's been very strong, as you said. I'm curious whether there's also new strategies being developed by OPD, the use of decoys, tracking devices on cars, the kinds of things that I hear is going on maybe more and more in San Francisco. So that actually prevention becomes best when you're basically taking perpetrators off the streets. That's prevention as well as violence prevention. So Are you, and also hiring young non-sworn investigators, greater numbers, so they can actually do the work that police then can follow up with? And those are 2 or 3 questions bundled around that response.
Yeah, no, those are really great questions, Dan. And so first and foremost, we're still under the federal oversight, which costs us millions of dollars. We've been under it for over 20 years. And so
Yeah.
I'm taking it very seriously to get us out of it. Hopefully by next year, I have been meeting with the judge and the federal monitor, and things are going pretty good right now. I mean, they're not looking for us to be perfect at OPD, but what they are looking at is that when OPD does make a mistake, like, are there internal checks and balances where they can then police themselves? And so I've been very clear with the chiefs that you must, follow to the T, on everything that we do, especially when there's an internal investigation of another officer.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, to your point, it's absolutely, yes, we are there is bait cars out there, and there are bait electronics, as part of our sting operations. We're using all kinds of technology. We're actually, when we know that there's someone who's using their personal card to commit crime, we are putting trackers on them so that we can really place them in the scene of the crime that's being committed at the time. And so there's a lot that is happening in regards to technology and tracking and tracing. And so we are working closely with the DA's office. We're tracking to see what is actually being charged, what isn't. Stay tuned for those numbers, because we will definitely let you know what's working and what's not working with the district attorneys. But at the end of the day, we all have to work together. The district attorney, no matter who sits in that seat, us and probation, we all need to work together to be on the same page, so that we are not putting our officers to work in a way where when they do apprehend, like, nothing gets done after that, right? And so we can only do so much of that really drains not just the morale, but drains all of the resources from OPD if they don't get charged. And so we're hopeful and optimistic that as we are, proposing these cases to the district attorney's office, that they will prosecute.
I'll turn it back to you in a minute, but one follow-up, and there have been a number of questions coming on when you mentioned your efforts to meet the requirements for Measure Z to have 678, and now there's 711 officers. I understand. What's your ultimate goal? Someone asked, in terms of numbers of police officers you want in the force to deal with attrition and retirement and so on.
Look, I can sit here and tell you, like, I want 1,000 officers. I prefer to have officers on every single street corner. That's me personally. But can we afford it under our restricted funds? That means we would have to take from somewhere. And so that's why it's so important that we actually create new money, right? Increase the pie, bringing in more retail, bringing in more businesses, what have you. And so doing both of that work around hiring officers and bringing in more resources is going to be key. However, knowing that we have constraints right now, like I told the chief, continue to hire. We are funding, we have 711 positions funded right now,
right.
But I'm telling the chief, continue to hire. Right now we have 712 officers above the number that we have set aside funding for, knowing that we will fill in those gaps as they come. But we're going to continue to keep hiring. So if you know of anybody who's interested in being an officer, please have them apply. If you know of anybody who's interested in applying to be a 911 dispatcher, please have them apply. You probably have read that, we have a 911 system that has not worked for decades. And so finally, we are putting in $2.5 million to increase the technology, update the technology, and increase the staffing levels. And so we have about 16 vacancies in our dispatch center. So what that means, and these positions, they pay pretty well. They start from $110,000 a year for the dispatchers. It is emotionally taxing. And so this is why I'm starting a new version of how we actually onboard our dispatchers. I want to treat this as a cohort instead of individually bringing on people, one by one. We should actually have cohorts so they can have emotional support for each other. And so we're hopeful that this can help us with retaining our veteran dispatchers so that we're not losing them. And of course, it is very important to me to ensure that our 911 system works. After I was elected, I tried calling 911 for a certain reason, and I was given the busy signal. That is not okay. That is not okay. And so we are definitely taking that seriously and working that through.
Yeah, that's a question that will be followed up on, I'm sure. And response time is such a critical issue for people who do need to call in for emergencies and crimes in progress, certainly. And the last thing I want to mention, because you brought it up, was guns, involvement of guns. Uh, what are you doing as administration to deal with the influx of guns into Oakland? I know it's a national problem across state lines, but is there something particularly focusing on Oakland?
Yeah, we're getting as part of the, even though people breaking into cars and vehicles is seen as a misdemeanor, what I'm fighting for is there to be a change in regards to how we see them as misdemeanors. Many people, if not every time we arrest somebody for breaking in windows, they have a gun on them, right? So it's become real dangerous. It's not just property crime anymore. And
Right.
so with that being said, every time my undercover team is out there and they're recovering goods from people's autos being burglarized, we are also actually apprehending not just the suspects, but we also are getting guns off the streets. I mean, I saw this crazy looking gun that looks like it's only made for war, and we were able to take that off the street. So that is a slower process, but we're working also with ATF to really do a huge gun operation. We've already done one where we go out and the U.S. Marshal will go out and work with OPD to knock on every door that where there's a parolee and make sure there's not a gun in the house, right? And so doing operations like that's going to be helpful. At the same time, working with the Attorney General to really figure out how do we work with other states so that all the guns that are coming into California, specifically through Southern California, that we can actually have some sort of actual tangible result from all the illegal guns that are coming in.
Well, I'll turn it back over to you. I have a list of questions. I have about 10 that will probably come up in your answers to the questions that have already been posed. So
okay, let me go ahead and read them through.
Go there with those, Brandon.
Yeah, so we'll go to
yeah.
Well, I have the questions on slides for you, Mayor. Make it nice and easy so everyone can see them. So we're going to go through the questions that you submitted in advance. We had about 70. We tried to answer the bulk of them during our slideshow, but there's some specific ones that we also just wanted to include so you could get a very straightforward answer or get some clarification around some things. So I've managed to condense them down to about 20. I'm hoping we can get through them, and you have some really good questions in the chat that I would really love to get to too. So let's see if we can get through all these. So let's go with question number 1 for you, Mayor Thao. This is not really public safety so much, but we all love to hear it. What is being done to improve permitting? It takes way too long. We had to put it takes way too long in this too.
And I agree. It does take way too long, and it really upsets me because we can be collecting more of those fees. And but at the same time, I know that building out, whether it's an ADU or what have you, which we really need because we're in a housing crisis, we need them to go up sooner rather than later. And so what we're doing under this administration, since 10 months that we've been in office, immediately we hired an ombudsman. So the ombudsman has done a lot of research and has gone into the planning department to really look at see like why does it take so long? And so there is going to be a streamlining for ministerial review process. There's the general plan and housing element that will have new overlays, which will speed up not affordable housing. But in regards to your own personal permitting process, the ombudsman has many recommendations to really cut down on the process and how long it takes to get an actual permit. And so we are actually actively, we have been working on this already. And so there will be some recommendation that will come to the city council from our ombudsman. And I am very optimistic that once we implement the recommendation, that you'll start seeing that there'll be a shorter wait time for permitting. But that is the goal, is to tackle it.
Great. Thank you so much. We are going to go to, this is a great question. How can the community get involved to make Oakland safer? What can community members do in Piedmont Pines to make Oakland as a whole safer?
I always say that it takes the full city, right? And so, for instance, I am launching Oakland Fresh. Oakland is really dirty right now, especially if you go to East Oakland or West Oakland, right? There's so much illegal dumping, encampments everywhere, what have you. And so for us, we're launching Oakland Fresh, myself and the city administrator, Justin Johnson. If you haven't had him come to Piedmont Pines to just do like a meet and greet, please, I would recommend doing that. The city administrator that I appointed, he's very interested in meeting the neighborhood. But on that note, it's about changing the culture in Oakland too, where we can empower community members, especially in areas where they have not been empowered before, to say, look, we're going to come and we're going to clean your street and give you a clean base to start off from. But it is your job and it is your responsibility as the community to really keep up with the cleaning of it. But when there's an abandoned vehicle or illegal dumping, call us immediately so we could come out and take it away, because we know that it will attract other illegal dumpers to come if you leave it there for weeks and weeks. More so than that, of course, volunteer or donate to a youth serving program. I think that part of us solving our public safety issues here in the city of Oakland is really investing in our young people. And that's going to be key. I talked about Oakland Fresh, but we are also doing many different things as well too. So if you join our listserv, you'll get a full list of that update. Also, of course, I would suggest that you join your neighborhood council. You're here with Robbie. She's amazing. Robbie and Stan has direct contact with my office through Brandon. And so we will continue to have that kind of direct relationship with you all. You are a little special because I used to represent the district. Don't tell other people. But yes, we know that there's a lot of different issues that are lingering around in District 4, and we're more than happy to support your current council member if needed. Next slide.
Why have you, Mayor Thao, not called for a state of emergency related to crime like some people have indicated?
Absolutely. This is a great question. I believe that, if we called for a state emergency, envision this. What does a state emergency bring to us? It brings us the National Guard. What does bringing in the National Guard, what would that mean for Oakland? That would mean that people will no longer come and visit the city of Oakland. We would not collect the tax dollars that we are currently collecting right now. The city of Oakland do not get a say in how the National Guard police in the city of Oakland. And so what that would mean is there could be possible curfews for everyone. We can't direct them. They don't work for the city. And so I think that it's a cost benefit analysis. I think that this would be a huge negative for the city of Oakland as we're trying to get a better name for ourselves. And so how we can help is really to get positive stories out there. Like, yes, the crimes that are currently happening, it's real. I feel it every day too. But there's other ways of combating this. And I do believe that we are doing that work. We've invested time to look under the hood and say, okay, what's working, what's not working, what needs shifting, and this is why I've also brought on Ursi Joyner. He used to be a captain with OPD. You might have heard of his name in the news. And he is my special advisor in regards to public safety and working with small businesses as well. And so there are different arms that of us coordinating and working together. I do not believe that calling for a state of emergency, especially, yes, the retail theft is up and it's increased, but that's everywhere throughout the nation, right? We're seeing crimes look a lot different, look a lot more brazen, and we just have to switch with the times. And so I do not believe that it is the moment in which we call a state of an emergency here in the city of Oakland. We are, I have direct contact with the governor, which he has really stepped up to help us time in and time in again. And so we're going to continue those relationships and get those resources that we need from whether it be the sheriff's office, CHP, or other areas.
Thank you, Mayor. We've talked about this a little bit already, but what are we doing about carjackings, car burglaries, especially in shopping districts? And then something else that was flagged specifically that folks in Piedmont Pines were flagging to me, Mayor, was that oftentimes when workers come, gardeners, construction workers come, that some of those people are being targeted as well, and how we are planning on addressing that.
Yeah, that's very tricky, right? And so, yes, we're going to put up the 300 flock cameras throughout the whole city, looking at, a high risk area using the data. Again, we have foot patrols in our shopping corridors. In regards to the different gardeners and folks who may be coming over to I think that what that is still something that's very tricky. I'll be very honest with you, just because, criminals are driving around looking for possible incidences where they can attack somebody and burglarize them or what have you. And that's still an ongoing issue. What we did was last week, we launched for a few hours, where you can actually connect with OPD via social media immediately. We know that burglars, when they break into, whether it's a house or whether it's a vehicle, or when someone's robbing someone, that it takes like seconds, like 10 seconds, and they're out. And so this is why we've launched a super pilot program where people can connect with OPD instead of having to call 911 via social media. We're going to put this, it looks pretty successful. That was the first time we've used it. And so when we're back online with officers who are actually paying attention to all the direct messages, we will be announcing it. And so this is important. If you follow my social media, we'll be announcing that, hey, this is back up and running. And so you could get that information directly to the officer immediately, and we will send someone out. Again, super pilot program. There are a lot of different negative things about it too, where yes, people can come on and lie about it or about a situation or what have you, but we have thought through some of those things. And so we're trying something new. I think that it's incredibly important that we continue to think outside of the box to see how our constituents can actually reach out to us in a more timely manner. And so that's something that we're trying. So in regards to gardeners and what have you, if that's up and running, then, that's a way that they can connect with us too for a quicker response.
And Mayor Thao, I think there's one thing that you're going to be announcing, I think tomorrow, that relates to protecting people from getting their car broken into, right? Downtown starts.
That's right. Yes, that's right. So we're actually launching a program in downtown called 5 After 5. And so if you are actually a worker in the downtown area, let's say one of your bars or a restaurant, you will actually get you will get a card where you can actually park at a discounted rate in our secured city garage on 19th Street. But if you're coming out for dinner, you're coming out for a couple of drinks or what have you, we want you to spend your money in the city of Oakland so we can collect those tax dollars. So what we're doing is it'll be $5 after 5 p.m. from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. the whole time. It'll be $5. And you can park securely in the 19th Street garage in downtown if you come out after 5 p.m. And so that is something that I will be announcing tomorrow.
Right. This is a great question someone asked, and you kind of highlighted a little bit, but walking officers were pulled a few years ago when crime was starting to peak, and folks want to understand why that happened.
Yeah, that was done under the previous administration, so I'm not going to speculate on the why of it. It was and it was a different chief as well too. It was my understanding as then a council member, I was a council member then, that they were pulling all the officers especially from the Oakland Hills to deep East Oakland, where many of the shootings actually take place. And so they were hyper focused on where gunfire was happening. And so that's why many of our resources were pulled, and the walk-in officers there were no more walk-in officers. All officers were to be in vehicles and head towards, wherever the need was, which was a lot of it was West Oakland and deep East Oakland.
Great.
That was just my understanding as a council member. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Thao. And then if I remember correctly, we did secure funding while in council to do holiday walking.
That's right. Yeah. And so I love foot patrol officers. And so, the last year that I was on the city council, I was able to, something that I really do pride myself on is understanding the city budget. So I was able to find extra dollars in the city budget to fund foot patrol officer just for the holiday season in 2022. Just for the holiday season. So that was when we saw foot patrols come back for just a quick moment, but they are back in full force right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Thao. What is being done about 911, and when can we expect to see improvements?
Let's see, with 911. Well, I think I talked about that a little bit. We already invested, we are investing $2.5 million for updated technology. And of course, we are hiring Again, we love to have Oaklanders take on these jobs. It is emotionally taxing, but it's very important. When can you expect to see improvements? I've asked my city administrator this as well too. And so the honest truth is that we will start seeing improvements by early next year, as we are trying to onboard all the people to fill in the vacancies. We are in the procurement process for updating our technology. It is a bureaucracy. It takes time. I feel like it needs to happen tomorrow, if not yesterday already, but we are moving it as fast as we can. And so it would really be helpful to get things moving along if we can get good applicants to apply for these positions.
Yes,
and you can help with that.
Yes, I dropped the link in there. I'll redrop it again, but you start at $109,000. So it ain't anything small. So if you know anyone who needs a job. Will the new flock cameras be installed in Montclair?
Yes, they will be. And so I've been given confirmation that they will be installed in Montclair, and it will be, of course, citywide. With the focus on major arterials like Highway 13. Montclair Village also has already high-tech license plate readers that we can coordinate, and we continue to coordinate with the Montclair Village Association. We work really well with them. Of course, I used to represent the area, so know them really well. And then also, so I think that's it for that answer. Yeah, but yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. This was a question that came up even after we talked about it a little bit. So I want to talk about it again. The license plate readers, can you explain that they do more than just read license plates?
Yes, absolutely. And so the license plate readers, they're very high tech. And so they can actually zoom into the vehicles to really see the different details of the vehicle so that we can actually, apprehend the suspects and bring them to justice. And so with that being said, we know that a lot of these vehicles, they will flee from us and they will end up in San Leandro, Emeryville, Berkeley, San Francisco, or what have you. And so once the cameras start tagging this vehicle, if we can tag a certain vehicle in the camera system, then wherever they go, so long as they have a flock camera and that we are connected, we will see where this vehicle is going. It basically pings the vehicle as it's moving around throughout the city. So that if we don't have Argus is our helicopter, it goes out of commission a lot. And this is why, thank goodness that the city council approved this, that we're getting a new fixed wing airplane so that we can do that work still more often than not. And so, yes, so the cameras, they do more than read license plates, because we know I would not spend $1.2 million on cameras that are only reading license plates, because I know they're switching license plates. They don't have any plates at all. And so this is going to, I truly feel this will be very helpful for our officers to really support what they are doing. More so than that, I've directed the chief as well. You all should know, I have not yet announced this, but I've directed the chief to go and do some research around the larger drones, out of sight drones. And so because in certain cases where we don't have enough officers to show up to an incident, we can send out the drone so that it can start recording the area where the 911 call is coming in, and then really track from a different a whole completely different building where the suspects are headed, until we can either get the helicopter up and running, or we can get our OPD officers or highway patrol to get to the scene. And so that's another part of the technology aspect that we are looking into. And if I can just say that the political lift around this technology work, it sounds like, oh, great, it passed everywhere and it was easy. It was not easy. My staff did a lot of work talking to many council members, talking to many commissioners. It was a lot of political work that is rightly so the responsibility. I feel like it's the responsibility of the mayor, and we were able to actually get those wins. And so they were hard wins, but they were solid wins. And this is what a city would look like when we have a mayor who can work with council members, who can work with commissioners, is that we don't have to sit here and have you all call in to demand that council vote and pass for these license plate readers, that we can just do the grown-up work and move it along ourselves. And so it took a lot of work on my team, but it's work that is well worth it.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. This was a great question. What are the criteria for determining if the Department of Violence Prevention programming is effective?
Yes, and so, I mean, there are different metrics in regards to measuring the effectiveness of the program. Of course, the Department of Violence Prevention, they play a big role in ceasefire, right? Remember that small group of people who are more than likely to pull the trigger. And it's hard to collect data when people are not dying, but, you know, through other operations where we are hearing, you know, we are collecting the AG's office when they do their phone taps or what have you operation. We do collect how many lives are saved, in the fact that if someone says on the phone, I'm going to go and kill XYZ, we know we saved that life. But remember, that means that we also save all of the lives that will not be retaliated against because that one life was saved. And so a lot of this gang group crimes, a lot of them are retaliations, right? And so of course, that's really hard to capture those numbers, but we try our best to capture those numbers. Also, at the end of the day, how we determine the effectiveness is bringing in those who we know but we have not caught in the act of, you know, whether it's breaking into windows, what have you. We bring them in, and the Department of Violence Prevention really try to partner with them to get them services. And the demand is that they stop the violence that they are creating. And so the Department of Violence Prevention do have solid numbers in regards to the effectiveness of this. I can tell you that without the Department of Violence Prevention, it would be a lot worse than it is today. But they do have those numbers. I don't have those numbers with me right now, but we can definitely get it over to you.
Great, thank you, Mayor. In 2017, the council authorized $12.8 million to improve 911, and the money was never spent according to a report. Do you know, I know this was before you were even on the council, but do you know what happened with this money?
In 2017, you know, I can't sit here and tell you that I know exactly what happened. I was not on the city council, nor was I in the mayoral position. But that is something that we can definitely go back to finance. You know, Bradley Johnson, who has been here for many decades, he can definitely let you know what happened with that money. And so Brandon will take it back and we'll send over the answer.
Right. This is a duplicate, then my bad, everyone. I'm sorry. I just really care about you all, so I wanted it to be double asked. What is being done to get illegal guns, including ghost guns, off the street? I think Stanley asked this question already.
Yeah. Something that I forgot to also mention is, of course, we continue to have gun buyback programs. But the problem with the gun buybacks is that, you know, it's only going to be the people who have guns who are willing to give them up. And so it doesn't do much in regards to whether it's ghost guns that people are actually making to do illegal things. And so, you know, we're looking at all different aspects. Obviously, we want people to turn in their guns, because if your home gets broken into, that gun may be taken and used in violent crime. And so we continue to do that work as well.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. Here's a good question. Why did you fire the former police chief? Did the new report that came out about the police chief change your mind about that firing?
Yes, I really appreciate this question. So I fired the former police chief for no cause. That means I did not fire him because of any report that was issued. I think it's incredibly important that we get out of the federal oversight, you know, and part of getting out of the federal oversight is being able to have a chief who can work with the judge, the federal judge, who we do not appoint, and the federal monitor, who we do not appoint, right? And so at the end of the day, I do not feel that Mr. Laurent's values aligned with mine in regards to getting us out of the federal oversight in a timely manner so that we can save millions of dollars. And so that was actually, so I fired him with no cause. Any of the investigative report has no bearings on that. However, I can tell you that the new report, it was a suggestion piece. It was supposed to be kept confidential because it's personnel. I can tell you that from the city side, we are not the ones who leaked it. But this was a retired judge who actually read only the report, but did not read the evidence that went along with the report. And so it was actually not a legal determination, but it was an opinion piece with her only reading just the report of what took place with the Michael Chung case without reading any of the evidence. And so, of course, the evidence comes into play a lot, but unfortunately, she didn't read that. And, you know, again, it was only an opinion piece, and it was supposed to be kept private because it was not actually legally binding at all. So those are the reasons.
Great. And maybe on that note, Mayor, do you know when we can expect a new police chief to be hired?
Absolutely. I'm excited for the new commissioners on the police commission that have just been seated. The reason why is because under the charter, it's the police commission's job to actually, which the police commissioners, they are volunteer citizens in the city of Oakland. And so they were selected by the selection panel. I believe I get 2 appointees as well too. But essentially they're the ones who pick the firm to go with to do the hiring process, which that has happened. The firm then will release an application, which that has happened. The application closes, that is completed. And so now we are in the process where the police commission is really taking in the names, reading through and interviewing candidates. And then what they will do is they will recommend to me the top 3 candidates that they feel will be the best to lead the department. And so from those 3, I get to interview them. And if I don't like any of them, I can send them back and have this process start all over, or I can pick one of the 3. And that is through the charter. And so right now, my hands are tied. I can't, hurry up the pace or anything like that. We are definitely waiting for the police commission, which I'm very optimistic that they will get me at least 3 names by the end of the year, so that in the new year, we can already have a police chief.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Thao. Do you feel the Oakland Police Department will get out of federal oversight? How long do you think that will take?
Absolutely. I do believe that we are very close, and this is why Mr. Armstrong is actually not my pick for chief. We are very close. We have to stay on top of our game in regards to, again, how our police officers police themselves. And so in the budget, what I have done is I funded a civilian position to actually work alongside the sworn police officers who's in charge of the internal investigations, because that's the part that always gets us in trouble, is are we investigating OPD in the correct way? I mean, think of a world where you have to investigate, all your coworkers. Like you're not, you may not do the best job because you know them personally or whatever have you. And so in order to really create a stronger way of actually meeting these standards, of course, one of the recommendations from the federal oversight is to have SEPRA, so a citizens oversight committee, to actually review all of the police allegation, right, the internal affairs stuff, to move it out from sworn officers to actually civilians. And so we're going to start that process. It's going to be a slow process, but we're starting it, now, and we're hopeful that we can actually get that process completed soon. However, getting out of the federal oversight, I think that there is a high possibility that, my conversation with the judge have been very positive. He has agreed with all the decisions that I've made, including, all the decision that plays out in the media. And so he's been very supportive. The monitor has as well too. And so we're hopeful to get out of the federal oversight sometime next year. And that is us crossing our fingers and our toes and hopeful that that we can investigate ourselves in an appropriate manner. It's not about how we get in trouble. It's about how we investigate ourselves when we do put ourselves in a predicament.
Yeah, and Mayor Thao, just very quickly, for the folks who don't know why we're under the federal oversight, maybe you can just very quickly summarize that, because some people may not be aware.
Yeah, we're under the federal oversight for now going on 21 years because of the writers case. Basically, the writers case is there's a group of officers who call themselves the writers, and they were planting drugs, beating people, way back about 20 plus years ago. And so there is a reason why we're under the federal oversight. However, I mean, our officers are the most well-trained officers. I mean, other departments are coming to Oakland to see what we're doing so they can implement it in their city. Like, I believe that our officers are some of the best trained officers, and it is time for us to get out of the federal oversight. We just need to show the courts and the monitor that, yes, we can police ourselves.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Thao, for that explanation. This is you already answered this question. I think Stan already asked this one. I don't know if you want to, if there's anything else you want to elaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. We have fake cars, where we're putting devices that have GPS tracing in them in vehicles. We're already utilizing the smaller drones, but again, I've directed the chief to go out to look at the larger drones. So we're working through FAA. We can't fly these drones without touching base with the Federal Aviation. And so those conversations are already happening. And so once they give us the green light, then we can start moving on utilizing the larger drones. Of course, I would have to go and find money somewhere for that, but that is my job to do, and I am very optimistic that we can find some funding for that. But yes, and so those are all the different new strategies that we are developing and implementing to ensure that our home burglaries and car burglaries will decrease.
Thank you, Mayor Thao. Great question too. Another one. Why is the Department of Violence Prevention staffing up with city employees when it is much more cost effective to contract services out to the most effective nonprofits doing this work?
Yes. Well, because there's going to be standards that are held in the city of Oakland. I do believe the best way to actually establish a Department of Violence Prevention is through the city. Again, there is a standard to be held. What I'm trying to do is really suss out, all the different nonprofits that are taking on work for the city, whether it's in homelessness or violence prevention or what have you. I want to get out of the habit of funding organizations just to fund organizations. I need to have metrics on what are their success rates? What is the continuous success rate of the different clients that they work with after 1 year, after 2 years, and funding only the nonprofits that are effective. And I know that the question says the most effective nonprofits, but in regards to the violence prevention staffing, I do believe that the best work will come from the city in regards to this. And then, of course, there'll be different areas that are more narrowly tailored that where we can partner with nonprofits, which we still do. The Department of Violence Prevention, we still actually contract out some of those work that we have to different nonprofits that do great work.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Tom. Hey, here's a great question. That's a great follow-up to that. How effective is the city in ensuring nonprofit agency outcomes are being measured and acted upon so that the city only funds those that deliver on their contract goals and objectives?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Applause for that. I'm a big believer that we don't have money to be somebody to give out free money. That's not the case. So I'm taking it very, very seriously that we are measuring and looking at all the metrics. And when people come back for, let's say they're so used to getting funding for whatever, the past 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever have you, I will be asking them, what are your success rates? How are you measuring your success rates? And are you circling back with people, to see, for instance, our unhoused community? If you can get someone into, let's say, supportive housing, right? Are they still in permanent housing, or are they back on the streets, right? That tells me whether or not you're being successful, because for me, success is making sure that people, if you're housing someone, that they stay housed, and that they have continuous resources in regards to support resources on, hey, you should probably go to work, or, make sure you pay your bills or what have you. And so we do have some really great nonprofits out there that are doing that great work. And I'm interested in giving them the funding and funding them even more if they're doing great work. But I'm not interested in funding organizations just for the sake of funding it so that we can say that they are doing the work.
Great. Robbie, do you want to, where'd you go? You disappeared on my screen. Robbie wanted to ask something real quick, and I do know where she went because everything is open right now.
I can see her on my screen, but.
Yeah, I'm having some fun stuff with Zoom right now, of course. Robbie, I'm asking you to unmute yourself.
All right.
Okay. Sheng, I know that how hard you fought on our undergrounding project for phase 2 to get it a variance issued by the CPUC. We thank you immensely for that. That was a very thorny phase 2. We are now, I don't expect you to have an answer to this, but I want you to be aware that in October, the CPUC issued a a ruling basically denying us phase 3 because we didn't have enough work credits. If I have been unsuccessful in getting answers, I know that it's been turned over through CELSO in the legal department to outside counsel, but it might need your help in getting us back on track. So I would appreciate anything that you can do to help us with that.
Can you tell me? Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, this is, you know, how serious I take this. I mean, this is like the difference between saving lives and not. And so in regards to phase 3, do you know how many, what the mileage is on that? Or
I
how far?
just know it's about 250 homes.
Okay.
It goes from Castle up to Skyline and then down from Skyline to Carisbrook.
It's contiguous with Walkie Miller Park, which is
Yes,
Ah.
it's already an approved project. It's you know, glistening free, except now they have canceled the 28 projects, which is the only way we can afford to do this. And as you know, we're in a very high risk fire area. So I've talked to Vlad about this, but if you can help us, that would be immensely important.
Okay, I'll get a briefing from Celso, Brandon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
can I just say something about the undergrounding, Mayor, if I may, around
Sure.
undergrounding as well. Thank you, and thank you, Robbie, for highlighting that. I know Joe DeVries is also someone that we want to make sure is included in these conversations, but you know, folks, I know I'm usually on these video things and I'm running things in the background, but part of my role in the office is to oversee wildfire prevention work. And one thing that we're also really, really pushing hard on the CPUC on, and we're actually gaining a little bit of traction, but may need some support from Piedmont Pines neighbors, is there is the 1,000 miles of undergrounding plan that PG&E is pushing through, which is a wildfire prevention effort. We are hoping to get, we're fighting to try to get the Hills included in this plan, as the Hills is the most densely populated area in a very high wildfire risk zone in PG&E's jurisdiction. So just kind of a separate route that we're also very much trying to work on, as we're also trying to work on to make sure that phase 3 happens, is a complete undergrounding of utilities. And then there is going to be the Shepherd Canyon Transmission Project, which is currently in the works, which will be a wildfire hardening project as well, that we are really pushing PG&E and the CPUC to ensure is protection. We can give you a little bit more of a briefing once we have more details on those, but just know that we are undergrounding is top of mind for our office. We've been hitting this since the end of the council, our council term. We've been carrying this work over. So Robbie, I'm super happy to coordinate with you on the phase 3 as well, to make sure that our office is on top of it.
And I know you will. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Robbie. Great question.
Robbie, why does it feel like I'm still your council member? Forever council member for y'all.
Right, we have 5 minutes for 4 questions, and then we'll get the other questions in writing. This is a great question, Mayor Thao. It's come up quite a number of times. It's about the missed grant deadline. So we missed the retail theft grant in September. Folks want to understand why. Obviously, people are feeling frustrated. They want to know how this will be prevented in the future, and if we have a grant writer or a grant researcher position for the city of Oakland.
Yes, no, I really appreciate this question. You know, at the end of the day, I'm the mayor and the buck stops with me. So I'm going to take the responsibility for this missed deadline. You know, and a lot of people are asking me, okay, well, what about the person who actually missed it? That is a personnel issue, and so I will not talk further about that. But immediately, the city administrator, Justin Johnson, he, you know, I asked him, I was like, what is your plan so that this never happens again? And he immediately sent to me a action plan showing how we will never miss this kind of a grant ever again. And a part of that is that during our budget proposal, we knew that we didn't have a coordinated grant system, right? So we knew that. I knew that as a council member as well too, and so that's why we funded a coordinated grant provider for the city during our budget process. And so this position is actually open, and we will fill that position. And that position will ensure that the different departments are talking to each other. I'll be honest with you, this specific grant was a request that 2 departments had to fill in the application, and that was part of the reason why the deadline was missed. It's my understanding. It was OPD and the Economic Workforce Development that had, their own respective parts in this application. And because we didn't have this centralized coordinated grant person, there was some miscommunication in that inflow and outflow. But at the end of the day, again, I'm the mayor, so I will take fault for that. But there have been already implemented parameters so that this never happens again. And so I know that it was a huge loss, but just know that we will continue. I'm pretty good at getting federal dollars and state dollars. And so we're going to continue to get those federal dollars and state dollars. As you heard, the president just announced a hydrogen hub here in the city of Oakland, and that's going to be huge in regards to creation of new jobs and being able to actually close the wealth gap as well too, really training Oaklanders in this green new space. And so that's something that we're excited about. But of course, we can't have missed grants like this. This is just missed opportunities. And I take that very seriously.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up question, or just quick follow-up question. Was there not a reason that the state gave us leeway on this, or was just not something possible?
Yeah, that goes into the more of the nuances. There was some technical difficulties as well too when city staff try to submit. And so, those are conversations that we're having with the state. There's issues with why it wasn't submitted technology wise as well. And so we're making sure that those technology issues, we're understanding the protocols a little bit better on that end as well too for the state side, and they're understanding what we had to go through, and they're fixing their things. And so it's a bunch of people fixing their things so that it doesn't happen again.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Thao.
Mm-hmm.
Macro was built on a solution to freeing up our police by shifting nonviolent, non-emergency crime 911 calls to a civilian force run by the fire department. How would you score the success of Macro now that it's ending its 2nd year?
Yes, Macro has proven to be very successful. We do have the data in regards to how many calls we get out, how many calls we get, and we send Macro to instead of the police force, right? And again, Brandon can give you those numbers once we receive them from the fire department. But the fire department is really thrilled to have Macro underneath their umbrella as well too. But it has proven, the data shows that it's proven to be very successful.
Great. Yeah. And one of the data numbers that really stuck out to Mayor that I do have is the increase from 2% of all their calls taken from 911 to or from calling in to 58%, which is a big increase in total call numbers just over the last year. 38. This is a little bit less hefty, but what are the major challenges or opportunities working with the city council?
Yeah. So working with the city council, actually, this is the first time ever that we're seeing the city council is working with the mayor's office and vice versa. We're also working with our city labor unions and our businesses, big businesses and small businesses. And so when we're all, we don't agree on everything, but I do understand, so I do have a person in my office, Zach Goldman, who is in charge of essentially relationship with the city council, so that if they have questions, we can answer them, so that we're not holding up any possible great legislation that we can start implementing on, so that it can, any legislation that can save lives, any legislation that can save us money or what have you. And, that work, that close, tight knit work, which is very hard work, I tell you, to really work with, not just the 8 council members, but also commissioners and then the city attorney's office and all of that, that it's proven to be fruitful. Again, and a great example is the cameras. The cameras went through with no one batting an eye, right? I think somebody in the media world actually stated that this was the quickest legislation to pass through the Privacy Commission And not just that, but it was also very quickly actually voted on from the city council, and it was a unanimous vote. And I don't think that that would have been the case just last year or the year before that or 10 years before that. And so, it's a lot of work, but it's work that is needed so that we can ensure that we're being very functional and effective here in the city as we represent all of you, our constituents.
Great. And then the final question. Oh, we kind of already answered this. The roads are in horrible shape. Why is that? And what is Oakland doing about it?
So we are continuing the great pave that Mayor Libby Schaaf started. And so we're going to continue to pave our streets. Of course, when it starts raining and the potholes, they just become larger potholes. We want to know about any of the larger potholes. I think I read in one of the comments, like there's a lot of big potholes in Montclair. If you can please, do your C-clip fix or your Oak 311, that is the best way to get it to us so that we can start doing that work. If I can just say something about morale at the city of Oakland, when I came in as mayor, I can tell you that, I always hear people say the city staff morale is really low. This was lower than I even expected it. And so we're seeing that, I don't know about you, but I have been seeing a lot more officers driving around in the city, right? The presence is a lot higher than what I have seen in the past. And that is because the morale is actually increasing in all of our departments, whether it be OPD, Public Works, our homelessness division, and it's interesting, if I can just share here with you all, it's very interesting because, coming in as mayor, I thought that, like why would the city workers want to hear a speech from me? Like if I give them, they want to do the work. No, that's not true. They do want to hear from me personally, is what I have learned. And so I've been doing a lot of work, showing up to different places where our city staff are working, really appreciating them, showing up unannounced, not to get them in trouble or anything like that, but showing up unannounced just to say thank you, I appreciate you. And lo and behold, it goes a very long way, especially with our police officers and our firefighters. And so we are I would consider this being in a really strong space. And this is how we're able to actually increase our police officers force, right? Went from below 673 officers at one point last year to now getting close to almost 730 officers. And that is not by fluke accident. That is a lot of attention and a lot of work on my part, on my office, on my chief's part, to really bring morale back up again. And so we're really excited about that. And of course, it's also the city administrator. And so a lot of the leadership here is taking that part very seriously so that we can be more effective with our city staff.
Great. And that concludes the end of our questions. I'm going to download the chat and make sure that that I get these written questions over to Robbie and Stan, because there's a lot of really, really good ones in here, and we definitely want to answer them. I would love if you'd like to close it out. I'm not the featured host here today, so Stan, Mayor, Robbie, if you want to say goodbye to folks and do our head out.
Well, we have a few unanswered questions, but you've really addressed the major ones, and I appreciate the time you take and Brandon to support this effort to talk to people in Piedmont Pines. So I want to wish everyone good night. Robbie, you want to add anything? You're muted, Robbie.
Brandon, can you unmute?
I just want to thank everybody for joining us. We had near 100 people joining us tonight with 70 questions submitted in advance. We are clearly an involved and engaged community to which I owe you a debt of gratitude. And thank you, Mayor Thao. You have done a fabulous job in answering so many of our questions.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the whole Piedmont Pines neighborhood for coming out and really listening to what is actually happening on the ground. I know that media doesn't give the full, picture. I only get about 15 seconds with them, 30 seconds. And so I really appreciate this. This will not be the last time I come out. I want to continue to come out and have these updates with community because, you should hear straight from me. And if anybody knows me, I'm a straight shooter. If there's something that I'm lacking in, I'll be the first one to admit it. And so I really appreciate the partnership. It's going to take all of us to get to a stronger and better place. And so thank you all so much for attending.
We look forward to hearing you at our annual meeting in January, and thank everyone for attending. And more questions to be answered, and appreciate your upbeat approach to addressing these problems. And there's a lot more work to be done, and we're all supporting it. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, and have a safe Halloween, everyone.
Yes, that's right.